So I've reviewed a number of GameSir controllers on this channel, some that are more budget friendly and some that target the more competitive gamer, like the Cyclone 2 for example. But today I'm checking out a controller which on paper looks to offer both. This is the Super Nova by GameSir, a wireless pro controller designed for Nintendo Switch, iOS, PC and Android. It has Hall effect thumbsticks, two programmable back buttons, RGB lighting, trigger stops, a charging stand and all for an affordable price. So is this the total package? Well, in today's video I aim to find out. To do this I will be reviewing the controller in four main categories, talking pros and cons in each, all before giving my overall thoughts at the end. At this point I will mention that GameSir sent me the Super Nova for the purposes of this review. But as always, this has had no impact on the content of this video or my views expressed in it. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. So as I mentioned in the intro, we will be reviewing the GameSir Super Nova in four review categories, starting with the price and everything included with a purchase. Secondly, the design and key features, touching on aesthetics and the controller's main attributes. Thirdly, the customization, including anything visual and as well as anything that affects gameplay. And then lastly, the playtest. How is it under use? As always, we begin with the price. And in the UK, the Super Nova will set you back around £40. The US, $45, and in the EU, about €45 respectively. A very tempting price, I'm sure you will agree. Made that bit more tempting when you check out what you get included for the price. Firstly, of course, you get the controller. This pretty sleek looking charging stand, a 3-foot USB-C charging cable, the wireless dongle, and a pack full of stickers, and of course the instruction manual. Keep a hold of this as it does come in handy if you do need to refer back to it from time to time. Taking a quick look at a couple of the accessories, and I'm actually pretty impressed with the charging stand. It's minimal, effective, and has matching RGB to the controller, which is a nice touch. The USB cable is pretty basic, which is generally the case with GameSir cables, but it does do the job. So as you can see, GameSir certainly does provide us with a fair bit of bang for our buck. Some nice accessories and a very tempting price point. But how about the controller? What can it do that would make you want to pick one up? Well, let's move on to the design and key features. Beginning with the overall aesthetics, and largely I like the look of this gamepad. Reminiscent of an Xbox controller, it has offset sticks and a familiar button layout. We have prominent black rubberized side grips which have a slightly textured feel, and you'll also notice the RGB bands that curve around the front of the controller, which I feel are pretty effective. Moving on to the back, where we can see the continued rubber grips, as well as the back shell that sports a matte finish. We can also see the trigger stop latches, as well as a slidable dial that is used to flip the controller into different connection modes, be that Bluetooth, wired, or by using the supplied dongle. Checking out the actual triggers and bumpers themselves, and to be honest, they do seem a little basic, and the bumpers are a little boxy in my opinion. They also lack any texturing, which I generally do prefer on my triggers and bumpers, but thankfully the thumbsticks do have a grip around the edges, to help them feel that little more secure. Moving on to the controller's features, and we should first start with the multi-platform connectivity. And as mentioned, it is compatible with PC, both wired and wirelessly thanks to the dongle, Nintendo Switch, and also mobile. Stick around till later on in the video to see how it fares on various platforms. The Super Nova also comes equipped with GameSir's Hall effect thumbsticks, which as you know mean virtually no chance of stick drift, which should mean a longer lasting gamepad. We also have two-stage Hall effect triggers. And by two-stage, they mean the full regular trigger pull and also a shortened trigger mode implemented by flipping the latches on the back of the controller I mentioned earlier. I am happy these have been included as it really is something I value in a gamepad. But unfortunately they don't feel the best and aren't anywhere near as instant as others that I have used. But a nice inclusion nonetheless. We are also given the option here to turn on a hair trigger setting via the controller's OS. So this does make it feel more like a regular hair trigger. Next we have two programmable back buttons that can of course be bound to any of the face buttons, really upgrading possibilities when gaming. These can also be used for macro recording, not something that I dabble in too much, but it is there if it is something you have an interest in. Rounding out the rest of the features, and for the gamer looking for every possible advantage, the Super Nova does have a 1000Hz polling rate mode when played both wired and wirelessly, which is awesome. Customizable RGB lighting, removable magnetic faceplates, a 1000 mAh built-in battery, 6 axis gyro support, and also this really cool feature where you can swap out the face buttons. So you can swap from an Xbox button scheme to Nintendo. Now I actually love this because as someone who does play in both ecosystems, it can be a little confusing pressing A when you mean B or pressing B when you mean A. Hit like if you know what I mean. So overall in this area, I'm sure you'll agree that GameSir have provided most of the things that you might want in a Pro controller. Although admittedly, some of the features aren't quite as refined as some of their other controllers. But in conjunction with the price, I'd say is a decent trade-off. Now, it's time to move on to our third review area and talk about the customization. As with most GameSir controllers, this is a strong area for the Super Nova. And we start off hot by talking about the GameSir Connect companion app, which allows us to fine tune the gamepad in various ways. Obviously, we can bind our back buttons and basically any other button function, set our thumbsticks and trigger dead zones, controller curves, toggle the hair trigger mode, adjust rumble, and pretty much anything else you might want to do. From here, we can also cycle through the RGB settings, be that the animation or set any color combo we might choose, or even turn it off completely if you do find it that little bit distracting. So when it comes to fine tuning the controller, we have it pretty covered. But we do have some aesthetic customization also. Most notable is the swappable magnetic faceplates. Now, while we don't get a second faceplate provided with a purchase, GameSir have been kind enough to send out a couple for me to try out, which you can see here. I believe they retail for around $8, so not too much to splash out to really change your controller up. I particularly like this burnt orange one seen here. And lastly, I need to again mention the ability to swap out the face buttons to fit whatever system you are gaming on. And again, this is most prominent for those using this on PC as well as Nintendo. So as I said, just like other GameSir controllers, this is a strong area for the Super Nova. The companion app is a powerful tool, while the swappable faceplates are a highlight for me. And after 3 sections, the Super Nova is sounding pretty good. But it is time to move on to our last review area, the playtest, and see how it is under use. Starting off with the general feel in hand, and if you are familiar with other GameSir controllers, like the G7 for example, this does feel slightly larger. It's comfy enough, very reminiscent of an Xbox gamepad, while the rubberized side grips feel great and keep the controller secure in hand. I'm a fan of GameSir Holothec thumbsticks, so no surprise that these feel good to me also, with a right amount of tension, while the gripped edges of the thumbsticks give some extra security. Touching on the back buttons, and they are really nicely placed, and actually feel pretty nice to me. They have clicky actuation, which is different to similar gamepads, and are a little smaller than I would have expected. But in general, I'm pretty happy with them, and the clicky actuation to me seems like it could be beneficial in preventing accidental button presses, if that is something that you have noticed on other controllers. A couple areas where I'm not such a fan are firstly the bumpers. They just don't feel great and are oddly shaped and aren't very satisfying to use. The same can be said about the triggers. I mean, they are fine, and I do like the fact that they have trigger stops, although as I mentioned earlier, they could be implemented better. But again, not the most satisfying to use. The face buttons are also nothing to shout about, but no complaints here really. When it came to actually connecting the controller to my devices, I had no problem, with everything syncing easily as instructed by the manual. I also had no problem with losing connection or any issues while playing. I tried out the Super Nova on Nintendo Switch, my iPad, laptop and PC, where I had a good time on each. Platform games and side-scrollers are generally what I like to play on mobile and on my Switch, and the controller felt right at home here. On PC, I tried out a couple shooters, and the gamepad felt responsive, with the hair trigger setting paired with the trigger stops letting me get my shots off that little bit quicker. In fact, it felt very similar to the experience I had with G7 when I tested that out a wee while back. The 1000Hz polling rate helps the Nova feel nice and smooth, and overall it performed nicely in my game time. But what holds it back for me is really the bumpers and triggers. Not awful by any means, I'm just a stickler for them, and I have been treated to some pretty good ones recently. Now, I actually have a little bonus test for you here, and the eagle-eyed ones of you out there may have noticed that I have been using the Super Nova on Xbox. And this is all possible thanks to the Brooks Wingman XB3 converter. I won't linger here for too long as this is a separate purchase, but if you are interested, this will allow the Super Nova to be used on Xbox. And in my testing, it felt more than adequate via this method.
So anyway, with 4 review areas covered, in totality, what are my overall thoughts on the Super Nova by GameSir? Hall effect thumbsticks, programmable back buttons, trigger stops, RGB, a charging stand and an affordable price has it on paper looking like the total package. It even has some killer customization options, the removable magnetic faceplates and the all-important companion app. Let us set this puppy up to suit our playstyle. And it even has a 1000Hz polling rate to give us the smoothest and best gaming experience. But it is held back in a couple areas. I'm not a fan of the triggers or the bumpers. Now I am glad it does have trigger stops, but in all honesty they do feel a little tacked on and aren't the most satisfying to use. I just feel that it lacks some of the finer details which I have seen in other GameSir controllers recently, and it just doesn't quite have that tactile feel. But with that being said, this is still a crazy good package. So if you're someone who's looking for an all-encompassing gamepad which doesn't break the bank, which also offers many things which a controller triple its price can't even match, then the Super Nova is a super choice here. But that's just my thoughts, and I would love to hear what you guys think about the Super Nova. Is this your next controller purchase, or are you waiting for a price drop on another controller? Remember to let me know in the comments below. Oh, and of course do me a massive favour and hit that like button, because it really is the best way to help get this video out there. And also, we are this close to hitting 2,000 subscribers, which I'm super happy about, and I want to continue to see this grow, so any help would be amazing. Hit that sub button, that would be class. Oh, and of course, if you do end up hitting that sub button, you're going to see more controller reviews just like this one right here, checking out the GameSir Cyclone 2. But anyway, guys, that's the video. Thanks so much for watching, and until the next time, I'll catch us.